So you've heard Webflow is cool and you're considering learning it? Well, on this video, I'm gonna give you the basic and gonna build this page in only 16 minutes. Let's do this. All right, let's get started. But before we jump into Webflow, I actually want to explain a quick concept that is super important before you dive into Webflow so that you understand what you're even doing within Webflow. So the concept is called the box model, and here's basically what I want to show you. Everything on the web is actually boxes within boxes. And let me show you how it looks. So here's the Apple website. I'm on Chrome here. I'm gonna click inspect, which basically gonna show you the code for this website. So what you can see here on the top is called HTML, and that's the code for this. And you can see as I move through this, you actually see the boxes on this page. And it's basically just boxes nested within boxes. The button here, as you can see, is a box and it's called a button. That's the name of this box, and by giving it a style, a name, basically that's what you see down here. That's the CSS. Basically that's the style. The name defines how does it look like. So what's the font size? What's the background of this? Exactly how this button looks, because it's called a button. So this is in like 30 seconds, 70% of what you need to know about building for the web. It's basically boxes within boxes within boxes. These boxes have a name. And the name, the style, basically defines how they look like and how they interact with one another. Now that you know this, let's jump right into Webflow. So the first thing that I want to do here before I even start throwing things on the page is actually define the main box here. So as you can see, we have here body. That is the main box of the website selected. And I'm going to give it a style so that we can define it. Basically what I want to do is give it a background of black, because the whole page is going to be black, and I'm going to give it the basic kind of fonts so that the whole font is going to inherit that font and going to use that. So it's going to be white and it's going to be this specific font. So let's start with it. On the right here, we have the styling panel, which basically means for this specific style, how is it going to look like? Now, I'm not going to give it, I'm just going to click here and select the body tag because that's what we're styling right now. And I'm going to scroll down into a background because basically I want to choose like a black background. And you can see that we've changed the background here because we're editing this box, the body. And the next thing I want to do is in the typography section, I'm going to choose white because I want white text. And I'm going to choose Montserrat font, I think. I don't know. Let's start with that. All right, so let's get started. What do I have here? Basically, I have here two kind of sections, and I'm not building this properly as I would if this would be a real website. I just want to show you the main concepts here. So basically, there's two things here. There's the navigation, and there's the rest of the content. So let me just throw in kind of like two. The basic boxes are called div blocks. So I'm just going to throw in two div blocks. One and then two. The first one is going to be the navigation, and I'm going to give it a name here. I'm going to call it nav, just so that now I can style and refer to that style. As we said, now it's a box with a name so that we can give it a style. Now basically we have three things in it. We have this hamburger menu, the logo, and then a search button. And I've went ahead and uploaded here into the assets panel a bunch of assets. And so let's just throw them inside, right? Let me throw in the menu here, and then I'm gonna throw in the logo, and then I'm gonna throw in the search icon. Just throwing in three images into this box. Now, as you can see, they're not sized properly and they're just stacked one next to another from left to right, because that's the default on the web. We read from left to right, so that's how things are stacked. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to make sure that they are, distributed from left, center to the right. And so the way that I'm going to do this is by changing the layout here of the nav box from the default, which is called block, into something that's called a flex box. It's something super powerful. I'm not going to dive super into this right now, but by choosing this, now I can change the justification of all the content that's in this box. So left, center, right, and we also have here space between, which basically means it's going to just space the elements equally. And that's actually good because that's one on the left, one in the center, and one in the right. Now, one thing that we know that we want is, and we can see it here, we want kind of equal spacing, right? From the top, from the bottom, from all the sides. So we're going to go back here. We have, this is called the box model, right? We talked about the boxes. So this is the space within the box and the space outside of the box. So let me just pull in, and I'm going to pull in holding the Option and Shift key so that I can pull in from all sides at the same time. And I'm going to choose 20 here. So now you can see we have 20 pixels on each side of this box, kind of spacing out things evenly. So that's good. Now the only thing I want to do is to change the sizing of this. So I'm going to add names for all of these elements so that I can properly refer to them. I'm going to call this menu, I'm going to call this logo, and I'm going to call this search. And the only thing that I'm going to change right now is actually the width of, so the size of this element. This one, let's turn it into 30 pixels. This one, let's see, 50 pixels. And this one, maybe 25 pixels. Again, I'm just doing this very, very fast so we can see that's looks pretty much okay. Now, next thing that we have here. Now, for this box, one thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that it's not too wide. And you can see here that the text is actually, not getting from edge to edge. And the reason is that because we have wide screens these days, we have to keep the content centered so that people don't have to kind of move their head from side to side. So we're using something that's called container. But by container, basically what we mean is for this box, let me call this container. We basically set a maximum width. So if we're on a very wide screen, we don't want it to be too wide. So let me put that at 1100 pixels. Just make sure that it's centered by clicking this center button. So now we have this element centered. Now we have basically two things here. We have this, let's start with this title, all new S-class. So I'm going to drop in a title or a heading as it's called here. So from the typography menu, from the add menu typography, I'm going to add a heading and I'm going to call this the all new S-class. And basically now we have a heading. Because it's a heading, it's already bold and kind of, it already has some style, but that's definitely not the style that we want. So we're going to edit this tag, H1 tag for the heading, and we're going to, let's start changing stuff here. In the typography, let's change the font to this, what's the name of the font? Common something. We're going to make it normal, not bold. We're going to make sure that it's centered. We're going to make it, I don't know, a little bigger. And also, let me look at this. Yeah, we want this to be all caps, all in upper capital letters. So we have here all caps. And that looks good. Now the only thing is that the S-class is way bigger than the rest of it. It's still one title, and it makes sense to use one element so that Google knows this is one title. But we do want to give this S-class a different style. So by selecting this, you'll see we have the brush icon here, which wraps it with another style. So this one, I'm going to call this big. H1. H1 stands for the big heading. And I'm going to make this really, really big. And also, I don't want them to be on the same line. I want this to take up a whole new line. So I'm going to change the display here into block. Block means this takes the whole line from top to bottom. They're a little bit too close to one another. So I'm also going to add a top margin. And now this looks pretty good. Kind of how I want it. All right, so we have the navigation, we have the container, within we have the H1. Now we want to bring in the image of the car. So let me just throw in the image of the car. Actually, from the assets panel, we're just going to throw this in after the heading. And yeah, boom, it's right actually on top of it. I didn't have to do anything. Oh yeah, but because I took up this, because this big H1 is actually moving up with the margin, it's actually already on top of it. Now this happens because this is actually a PNG, so with a transparent background. So when it's on top of the text, Actually looks pretty good. So I don't even have to do anything. I thought I'll have to reposition. So what do we have to do right now? We have to create this 3-column grid here. I'll do that by using an element here that's called the grid. That's a pretty powerful element. I'm going to put it after the image, and I'm going to edit it. I'm going to make sure I'm going to add a column because it's 3 columns. I don't need a second row, so I'm going to delete this row. And basically we have now a 3-column grid. Now basically you can see from the design they actually all look the same. So we're going to create one box and then we're going to basically duplicate it 3 times. So let me throw in a div block into this grid. And of course I'm going to give it a name so I can refer to it. So I'm going to call this, let's say feature box. And in this feature box, let me throw in a title because, you know, we have some title here. For example, luxury. All right, let me copy that and put it here. Obviously, it's not the style that we want. So I'm going to go here and edit this style. I'm going to change the font into something thin or light and maybe a little bit bigger. That looks all right. And below it, I'm going to put in a little bit of a text block. Actually, within this feature box, I'm going to put it underneath it. This text should probably be bigger. So I'm going to give it a style, and I'm going to call this feature text. And I'm going to make it maybe 18 pixels. And I'm going to make the line height a little bit bigger. All right. Now this looks all right. Let me duplicate this feature box 3 times. So now we have 3 columns here. Let's change the text pretty much so we can, it looks as if we've changed the text here. And the only thing that we have left is actually these lines. So, and we need a little bit more spacing here. So let's check the feature box and let's add a little bit of margin or padding from the inside of the box. Let's say 15 pixels from each side. Now the boxes are better spaced, I think. We'll actually probably add a little bit more. Now, remember that we said this is a box. So because this is a box, we can actually, if we scroll down all the way here, we can actually give the box a border. So in this case, we only want to give a border on the right side. So we're going to give it 1 pixel. We're going to make it white. And now we have, because these are all the same style, they're getting all the same, you know, features. So all of them got the line on the right. But actually, we do not want this last one. See, the last one, we don't want it to have a line. So let's add this last box, only this last feature box. We're going to add it an additional style to make it different. We're going to call this last box. So it's getting all the properties from feature box, but some of the things are going to be different. So we're going to keep the spacing the same, but we're going to remove this border. So now all the boxes have this white line except for the last one. Now basically we can finish here, but let's just make it fancier. Let me add some kind of an interaction or animation just to make it a little bit fancier. Let's go here into the interaction panel on the right, and let's add a page load animation. So we have triggers that the page triggers. One of them, if I'm going to edit, is page load. And this is basically an animation or interaction that happens after the page starts loading or finishes loading. Let me add a new animation here, and let's call this loading animation. Now, what I want to do is I want to make all of these elements appear nicely one after another. So let's start by actually saying, let's hide them and then show them when the page loads. So I'm going to start by choosing the image, and I'm going to choose here, I can animate all of these different properties. I'm going to choose opacity. I'm going to turn this down into 0. I'm going to trigger here something that's called set as initial state. So we're going to start off from 0, and then let me duplicate this element. Duplicate this, and then when the page loads, we're going to bring it back into 100. So this is what's going to happen. Now let's do this also for the feature boxes. So I'm going to select this one and start by hiding it. Set as initial state, and then let's duplicate this. In this one, I want this to happen after. Only after the car loads, this is going to show. So I'm going to bring back the opacity. Let's trigger that. So now car shows, and then this feature box show. Let's do this for these two as well. Start by hiding them. 0 opacity as an initial state, and then duplicating them, and then bringing back after the feature box. Animate into 100. Let's do this for the last one as well. Start with opacity of 0 as an initial state, duplicate, and bam, bring back into 100. Let's play this. Boom, 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 boom. And now, when we're loading this page, it's going to animate in. All right, so that was it. Of course, this was very, very, very fast. And of course, there's so much more depth into Webflow, but I wanted to show you what you can do really, really fast. If you're interested about learning more, check out the link in the description. We have, of course, a full-on course on Webflow where we go really deep. Hope to see you with us and see you on the next video. Bye-bye.